you for coming out to tonight's meeting of the Peoria Planning and Zoning Commission. Going to take roll call. Commissioner Nancy Golden.
Present.
Commissioner Sean Hutchinson.
Present.
Commissioner Bill Lewis is not here. Commissioner Jay Otlowski is not here. Commissioner Jeff Nelson.
Present.
Commissioner Mitchell Bolnick is not here. And we have our new commissioner, Brian Patterson. Welcome.
Thank you. Present.
Thank you. And I'm Commissioner Lee Strickman. This commission is composed of Peoria citizens who have been appointed by the City Council to serve on the commission as a civic responsibility without compensation. Our duty is to study and review planning and zoning issues within the City of Peoria and then forward our recommendations to the City Council. All hearings are conducted in accordance with the rules for procedure and Robert's Rules of Order. Each case will be called in the order in which it appears on the agenda unless otherwise announced during the meeting. In the interest of maintaining a fair and efficient hearing, the Commission adheres to the following steps. Chairperson calls the case, staff gives a brief report and recommendation, applicant gives a presentation, opposition and support gives testimony, generally limited to 3 minutes per speaker, applicant may give rebuttal, Commission discussion and decision. Anyone wishing to speak must complete a speaker's request form and hand it to the planning assistant on my left. Please be as brief as possible and do not repeat statements already made by others. Anyone wishing to protest the decision of a commission public hearing item must request a second public hearing before the City Council. The request must be submitted in writing to the Planning and Community Development Department within 10 days after the Commission's hearing. All Commission recommendations on public hearing items move forward to a regular City Council meeting. The City Council will then act on the recommendation of the Commission. They may concur with the decision, modify it, or overturn it. We welcome citizens' comments, and as fellow citizens of Peoria, we thank you in advance for your participation. This is the final call to submit speaker request forms. If anyone wishes to speak, please fill out a speaker request form and reply it to the staff sitting to my left at the end of the dais. The consent agenda is for items that are routine in nature and consist of 4 items tonight. 1C is the minutes, discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the Planning and Zoning Commission held on June 16, 2016. 2C, CU 16-0008, Saguaro Motors. Discussion and possible action to consider a request to allow increased used vehicle sales at Saguaro Motors, located at 9231 West Grand Avenue. 3C, CU 16-0010, Giordano's Restaurant Outdoor Dining. Discussion and possible action to consider a request for a conditional use permit to expand an existing outdoor dining patio on Giordano's Restaurant located at 16222 North 83rd Avenue. And 4C, CU 16-0012, Palladium Reception Hall. Discussion and possible action to consider a request for a conditional use permit to allow a wedding reception hall use at a former restaurant located at 9864 West Peoria Avenue. Do any commissioners have any questions and/or comments? Commissioner Hutchinson?
Madam Chair, I recommend.
Oh, wait, we have a question. I think we have a question.
Okay.
Commissioner Golden.
I just have a question of the staff, and I'm sure you considered this, but on the reception hall, going from a restaurant to a reception hall, I would think a restaurant has people coming in and out for parking, but in a reception hall, everybody's there at the same time. Did they look at the parking situation?
Commissioner Golden, yes. When the application is filed with the city, we do a parking analysis.
Say that again?
We do a parking analysis when the application is submitted, yes.
Oh, okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Commissioner, do I have a motion? Commissioner Hutchinson.
Madam Chair, I move we approve the consent agenda.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. Please vote. And that passes. We now move on to new business. The first agenda item under new business is 5R TA 16-0004, legal nonconformity. Staff, please present your report.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Jennifer Faustino. I'm a planner with the Planning Department. Tonight, I will be presenting a zoning ordinance text amendment concerning nonconformity. The case number is TA 16-0004. This text amendment is city-initiated and consists of a complete rewrite of the nonconforming use article of the zoning ordinance. Supporting amendments are also proposed to various other sections to ensure consistency throughout the zoning ordinance. The goal of this request is to provide clear and concise regulations that will identify legal nonconforming rights but discourage their perpetuation and expansion. In the context of zoning, nonconformity refers to a building, site, or use that does not adhere to current zoning regulations, such as parking and landscaping requirements, building setbacks, and allowable uses. This typically happens when an update to the zoning ordinance or the annexation of a property from another jurisdiction has occurred after the establishment of a building, site, or use. The nonconforming standards used today were formally established in 1971 and have since only been amended once in 1981. These outdated standards consist of a classification system that is overly complicated and difficult to use. Many of the requirements negate one another and in some cases permit nonconformities to expand. These regulations do not provide staff with the tools necessary to work with the community in finding solutions to issues that arise when dealing with a nonconformity. The proposed amendments, however, will do just that, first and foremost by establishing what a legal nonconformity is. This will allow previously compliant buildings, sites, and uses the capability to remain as is without placing an undue burden on the citizens to update their legal nonconformity each time the zoning ordinance is modified. It will, however, be the responsibility of the owner to prove the nonconformity was established in accordance with the rules and regulations in effect at that time. Once legal nonconformance has been established, the new provisions will allow the continuation and routine maintenance of legal nonconformities through simple and clear parameters that will also prohibit the expansion, intensification, or relocation of legal nonconformities. For Article 1426, the title has changed from nonconforming uses to legal nonconformity. The table here shows the current regulations, which consist of 5 different categories for nonconformities, each with their own set of standards. Class A, nonconforming lots of record. Class B, nonconforming uses of land not involving buildings. Class C, nonconforming buildings or structures. Class D, nonconforming uses of buildings not permitted in the subject district. And Class E, uses of buildings that do not conform to the lot area per dwelling unit requirements for the subject district. Staff is proposing to remove this classification system and replace with the following 4 subsections. First, nonconforming buildings and structures. The proposed amendment will allow the routine repair and maintenance of nonconforming buildings and structures while prohibiting the increase of the nonconformity. Replacing damaged nonconforming buildings or structures will be allowed to a certain extent, and restrictions have been placed on the movement of a nonconforming building or structure. Second is nonconforming uses. The proposed amendment will again prohibit the expansion of the nonconformity and set regulations for the ability to reestablish a nonconforming use. Next is nonconforming lots. The proposed amendment will allow nonconforming lots to develop in accordance with current zoning regulations. And last is nonconforming sites. The proposed amendment recognizes nonconformance due to changes in development standards like parking and landscaping and directs applicants to the appropriate process for proposed changes to an existing site. The existing exceptions section currently regulates the restoration and repair of buildings, which is now part of the nonconforming buildings and structures section of the proposed amendment. Staff recommends to remove the current language and replace with the following. Additions to a non-conforming single-family dwelling shall be permitted if the added portion conforms to all current development standards as regulated by the subject district. Any nonconformity will be required to be brought into conformance in a timely manner if such compliance is mandated by state or federal law. Nothing in this section will prevent the full restoration of a building or structure that is listed on the National Register of Historic Places, the Arizona State Register of Historic Places, or the Peoria Register of Historic Places. And nonconforming signs shall be subject to Article 14-34. Now, all references to nonconformance in the zoning ordinance have been addressed with this proposed amendment, with the exception of the sign code. All regulations concerning nonconforming signage will be addressed in Article 14-34 of the zoning ordinance, which is currently under revision by staff. In Article 14-2, definitions, the existing definition for nonconforming use will be removed. Here is the proposed definition for legal nonconformity. The zoning inspector definition has also been amended to read as zoning administrator to remain consistent with the proposed changes. Article 14-4-1, classification of zoning districts, has absorbed the expectation of conformity to zoning district regulations from Section 14-4-2, which will be removed in its entirety. Section 14-5-8.h has been removed as it requires the registration of non-conforming accessory buildings through the Building Safety Department. Under general regulations for conditional use permits, all references to nonconforming use have been changed to legal nonconformity. For the variance section, nonconformance is currently not permitted as a consideration for granting a variance. However, staff proposes the following change to allow legal nonconformity status to be considered when evaluating a variance request for a nonconforming lot. Here, the verbiage concerning the recordation of nonconformance has been removed, along with changing all references from nonconforming use to legal nonconformity in the sand and gravel section of the special use permit article. Staff does feel that the key findings for this request have been met, as stated in the staff report. Staff recommends approval of case TA 16-0004, and staff is available for any questions you may have.
Do any commissioners have any questions of staff? Okay. I have now opened the public hearing. Do any commissioners have any questions? There is no applicant on this because this is something that is city-initiated, so we don't have an applicant to come up and speak. No more questions? Okay. Oh, okay. Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. I like a lot of the changes, definitely cleans up the language quite a bit. Had a question on 14-5-9 under the exceptions. And it wasn't regarding a specific change, but it's just a small thing, but under letter B in that section where we talk about detached guest houses, and we say that they're permitted in R135 and R118. How come not R143? Why wouldn't that be part of that?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Nelson, unfortunately, we weren't looking at that aspect when we were doing this revision. This was strictly to nonconformance, not in terms of the guest homes. Because you're talking in reference to the residential section. And we strictly only took out the portion regarding nonconformity and the fact that they have to be registered with the building division.
Okay.
So we didn't go in to clean up any of the other issues or concerns that may be out there that we need to address.
So do we anticipate in the future taking another swipe at these to do some of those remaining things like that, or is?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Nelson, we have a list of text amendments that are kind of forthcoming. We can certainly add that to the list.
Okay. Great, thank you, appreciate it.
Any other questions from commissioners? I am now closing the public hearing. Do I have a motion? Oh, any other questions from commissioners? Do I have a motion? Commissioner Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to make a motion that we recommend approval of case TA 16-0004 to the City Council.
Do I have a second? Commissioner, oh, thank you, Commissioner Golden. Please vote. And that passes. The next agenda item is 6R, TA 15-0007, lot coverage. Staff, please present your report.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Cody Gleason. I'm a planner with the city's Planning and Community Development Department. As referenced, the case you have before you tonight is TA 15-0007 for a text amendment to the zoning ordinance with respect to lot coverage. This is a city-initiated text amendment. The portion being amended is section 14-2-2.d, specifically the definition regarding lot coverage. The purpose of this request is really to codify a planning manager interpretation that was conducted in 2015 as a result of an applicant request. Planning manager interpretations only have the ability to interpret the existing code. They don't have the ability to go beyond that and add provisions that perhaps make more sense. Those would need to be conducted through a text amendment in order to not only codify the intent of the planning manager interpretation, but also to add any provisions that would facilitate better use of the zoning ordinance. The current definition for lot coverage is lot coverage means the part or percentage of a lot occupied by a principal and or accessory building. The proposed change to lot coverage you can see here would be the portion or percentage of a lot occupied by a principal and or accessory building's roof structure. Now, the difference for the slight changes that you see there is we are attempting to account for what I'll be referencing throughout the rest of this presentation as open-air roof structures. Roof structures that don't necessarily have 100% coverage, so something like a lattice roof cover, something that isn't completely sealed, if you will. We also added provisions to help account for typical situations that you'll find when evaluating permits. For instance, the lower provision for calculations of lot coverage shall exclude up to the first 2 feet of a roof eave or overhang. The purpose of this is in discussions with our building development division, they identified that the typical overhang that you see for most houses and structures is approximately 2 feet. Allowing for that 2 feet accounts for typical development, while you would be counting for overhangs that extend beyond that, so you're not providing an overabundance of allowances for a particular structure that had a cantilevered roof structure. There was a second provision added to the base definition as referenced for lattice-type structures. Lattice or similar open-air roof structures shall be calculated at 50% of the lot coverage area for those areas that are covered by the open-air roof structure. And that would be up to a maximum of 200 square feet. So those If you were to have a patio cover that were constructed of a lattice roof covering, if it were 300 square feet, you would only be calculating 50% of the first 200 square feet. So it would essentially allow for a 100 square foot reduction at maximum. Just an illustration for you here. We have a typical single-family home lot. The typical single-family home with a 2-foot roof eave or overhang. As you can see here, the building footprint is identified separately, and an accessory structure in the yard as well with the same identifications. This is what you would actually calculate for lot coverage, the portion that is covered by a solid surface. As you can see here, if a regular rolled roof patio cover were to be provided on the home, that is again counted at 100% because it is not an open air roof structure similar to what you would find with lattice. Here we would have a lattice roof structure that would be added as an additional patio cover. If that were, say, 200 square feet, you would take a 50% reduction of that to account for the space that is not 100% covered. Beyond that point, if you have a 200 square foot open air roof structure, everything beyond that point would be calculated at 100% for the purposes of the lot coverage calculations. Staff's key findings in regards to the proposed amendment are that it promotes reasonable means of lot coverage calculation in identifying those specific allowances where you have a typical alternate roof structure, an open air roof structure that is not 100% covered. Additionally, the proposed amendment provides an improvement and modernization to the zoning ordinance by eliminating the current ambiguity with respect to open air roof structures. As a result, staff recommends that the commission forward a favorable recommendation to City Council for text amendment TA 15-0007. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Do any commissioners have any questions of staff? Okay. I have opened the public hearing. Again, this is staff initiated, so there is not an applicant. Do commissioners have any other questions? Okay. I am now closing the public hearing. Any other comments from commissioners before we vote? Okay, please. Oh, do I have a motion? Commissioner Nelson?
Thank you. Madam Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we recommend approval of case TA 15-0007 to the City Council.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Commissioner Hutchinson?
Second.
Thank you. Please vote. And that passes. The next agenda item is 7R CU 16-0007, and that is Faux Tierra del Rio. Staff, please present your report.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the commission, you're stuck with me again for this presentation. The case that you have before you is a conditional use permit for a wireless facility located within the Tierra del Rio development, particularly on the EPCOR water facility site. It's just south of Happy Valley Parkway on 107th Avenue, north of the Hatfield alignment. The request is to obtain a conditional use permit, as I mentioned, for a wireless facility. The size of the project would be approximately 447 square feet and 50 feet in height for the pole itself. As referenced, the site is surrounded by the Tierra del Rio single-family residential development to the north, south, east, and west. The project itself is a 50-foot monopole with 6 antennas. The ground structure, along with the associated ground equipment, occupies approximately 447 square feet and will be located directly adjacent to the wall of the EPCOR water facility that is located on the parcel currently. Here's a photo simulation of the before and after, with the before from the west across 107th Avenue from the site. So you would see the cell tower sticking up above the tree in the right-hand photo there. Here we have the photo simulations from the south. This property is a single-family residential street that the photo is taken from. And this is on the other side of the EPCOR water facility. So the water facility kind of shoehorns around the proposed wireless facility site. Here we have a photo simulation from the north. This is from the single-family residential, again, to the north, across 107th Avenue. This is the visual that you would have of that cell tower. Notice was provided in regards to the notice of application as well as the notice of hearing in accordance with city standards. The site was posted in accordance with city standards by the applicant, and opposition was received within the first 21 days of the notice of application for this location. That opposition was received on June 2nd from Gihon Homes, who's the home builder for the surrounding single-family residential parcels that surround the EPCOR water facility site. As a result, the applicant was required to hold a neighborhood meeting due to the opposition that was received. In addition to the requirement of a neighborhood meeting, the applicant held an on-site meeting with the representatives from Gihon Homes in order to find out the particulars of their concerns with the facility. That meeting occurred on June 13th. The crux of the comments made by the Gihon representatives were that they had concerns regarding the obstruction of view lots for the lots in particular that were abutting the EPCOR water facility. Their request was to evaluate relocation of the wireless facility in order to prevent obstruction of those view lots. In addition to that specific meeting with Gihon Homes, a neighborhood meeting was held on July 27th at the Sunrise Mountain Library. Notice was provided in accordance with city standards. No members of the public were present at that meeting. The applicant and city staff, in addition to the neighborhood outreach, did attempt to contact Gihon Homes, and no response was received after the on-site meeting was conducted. Here we have a photo simulation that was constructed by the applicant after the on-site meeting with Gihon Homes in an effort to identify to Gihon the impact of the wireless facility on the homes that Gihon in particular was concerned about. As you can see, the wireless facility extends just beyond the top of the view fencing. However, the pole that you see without the arrows directing to it is an existing EPCOR water facility tower that currently exists on site and is as evidenced in the photo. Staff's findings in regards to this application is that the location and development standards for this particular zoning district are met by the application. In fact, if the site were an alternate structure, so if they had the capability of bringing in the array into a more compact array, so there's more centered around the pole and didn't extend so far beyond the diameter of the pole, this would actually meet all of the requirements of a principally permitted use. So that is the fact that it's not an alternate tower structure is what's triggering the requirement for a conditional use permit. Additionally, staff finds that the use will not materially be detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare of the surrounding neighborhood. As a result, staff recommends approval of case CU 16-0007, subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions of staff? Commissioner Golden?
I just have one quick question. If I remember correctly, this is now the third tower we put in that little area. Is that correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Golden, I'm aware of another facility, which is the church site off of, I believe,
Right.
Pinnacle Peak. I'm not aware of a third facility in the area, but you may be correct. I just may not
Yeah,
recall.
I mean, so the church is on this side, and then the other tower is on the other side. Now, that may be in Maricopa County. I don't
Yes.
know. But I mean, you can see them.
Yes, Madam Chair, Commissioner Golden. Part of our evaluation when we look at the wireless facilities is that we do request that the applicants evaluate the opportunity for co-location. So locating these wireless facilities on existing towers or existing vertical structures that might have the capability to house them. With that, we request information from the applicant to identify if it provides the signal that they desire. The applicant in this situation did identify that in order to provide signal to the homes that they are looking to provide for, it would need to be at this location. They had evaluated alternate sites within the immediate area, but because it's such a focused area that they're trying for, this location is what ended up working for them.
But they couldn't cohabitate the same one.
That's correct. They didn't have another facility that they were able to co-locate on in order to meet those signal requirements.
Okay, okay, great, thank you.
Are there any other questions from commissioners? Okay. I have opened the public hearing. Is the applicant present? Please state your name and address for the record.
Rick Shaw, with Verizon Wireless, 1222 West Cahill Drive, Beats, 85085. That was a very thorough report, so I don't have a whole lot to add. I would say, in addressing your question, ma'am, I'm not familiar with where the church exactly was. You mentioned Pinnacle Peak Road, and I'm not sure what the cross street was, but I know that Pinnacle Peak Road would be pretty far south of where we're trying to go. We actually wanted to be farther north of where we're at now.
You know what the gravel pit is? And it's just across the street from the gravel pit at the end.
Okay. Well, we were trying to actually get right at the intersection of Happy Valley and 107th Avenue, and we wanted to, my initial site was the EPCOR facility that's actually to the north of this one, but it's much smaller, and EPCOR just didn't have enough ground space for Verizon to put a facility in there. So they directed us to the southern property, which was much larger. It's again already out of our search ring, and we couldn't go any farther. The Guy and Rome's representative also wanted us to go to the south as well. It just wasn't going to work. It was going to interfere with another site that Verizon has. So there's so many towers in Phoenix Metro right now. We're trying, Verizon and the other carriers are trying to put towers in between towers. And if you shift it very much nowadays, you're going to shift right into the coverage area of another site. And then you just, make that new site, it goes down from 100% effective to 50% or 40% because you're interfering with the other site. So it's getting a little more difficult now, and the search areas that we're being tasked with from the carriers is just getting smaller and smaller, much tighter, and this one was very small, really right at the intersection of Happy Valley and 107th. And of course, there's no opportunity there. It's all homes and a little bit of open space. There's nothing that would have gone in there. These EPCOR facilities were the closest targets, and only one of them was available. So
Okay. Well, actually, I have to be honest with you, I drop calls in that area all the time, so
Right.
I'm happy to see it.
Right.
I just didn't quite understand why there had to be so many towers in that area.
Right, and I'm not sure of the other one that was mentioned. I'm not sure whose tower that is. I don't know if it's a Verizon tower that's across. I don't think it is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, yes, ma'am. And the only other thing I guess I would offer, there was a recent change. Verizon Wireless has decided to move away from its national policy of having a generator at every site, and they're going to be taking those away from a lot of sites, including this one. So our compound area is probably going to shrink down. It really doesn't affect, I think, this proceeding, but just as an FYI.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that?
Yes, sir.
You said you're not have the generators there anymore?
Right, the
Meaning-
emergency backup power generators will be.
So does it mean the sites are going to be quieter, or is it mainly just a smaller footprint?
Well, both. They do, the generators only run once a week for about 30 to 45 minutes, and they exercise themselves, and the site actually runs off the generator during that time. And it's a way just to make sure it's operating correctly. But because of money and other reasons, they've decided to move away from that national policy. So when they're not operating once a week, then they would be overall quieter. So you wouldn't have that once a week. And if power goes out, of course, they're operating until power comes back on. Doesn't happen a lot, but it does. The new generators are actually a lot more quiet than they used to be. They use the whisper quiet variety, so they're actually pretty quiet. But again, this one, we're going to remove it.
Thank you.
Are you in agreement with staff recommendations?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and Commissioner Patterson, you have a question?
Madam Chairman, thank you. Yes, my question was, the elevation is fairly high at that location. Is 50 feet necessary to get proper operation of this site?
Yes, sir, it is. Actually, up by the intersection that I was speaking of, the ground elevation, it goes up there, and because we went from there and went south, it slopes down, pretty quickly in there. So we actually could have done a shorter tower up there by the intersection, but the farther south we got, the higher we had to go. So that's the bare minimum that the RF engineer could get by with.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Do any commissioners have any other questions of the applicant? Okay.
Thank you.
I am now closing the public hearing. Any additional comments from commissioners before we vote? Okay, do I have a motion?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Hutchinson.
I recommend approval of KCU 16-0007, subject to the conditions in the staff report.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second?
Thank you, Commissioner Nelson. Please vote. And that passes. Are there any comments from the public on non-agenda items? Seeing that there are no comments, the next item is reports from staff. Does staff have anything to report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commission, just a couple items. So the September 1st, 2016 meeting will be canceled. We don't have any items for that evening. But the September 15th, 2016 meeting will be held here in the same location at 6:30. Also, I'd like to point out that with the addition of Commissioner Brian Patterson, welcome, we have a complete commission, and at that September 15th hearing, we will elect officers because Mr. Patterson filled the position of the former vice chair, and so we will use that opportunity to re-elect our officers.
Okay. The next item is reports from the Planning and Zoning Commission. Do any commissioners have anything to report or state? Seeing no further business, I call this meeting adjourned.